Welcome everybody, Shiur number 610. We're learning today Le'iloi Nishmas Moshe Dov ben Rabban Zisel Le'iloi Nishmas Blima Bas Rab Moshe. Okay, getting back to our malacha of DOSH, mefarek, squeezing materials and so on. Okay, I want to go through a couple of various different types of brushes. We spoke about last time a few shiurim ago in reference to the concept and the understanding as to what the problem is when we're talking about squeezing out a brush or squeezing out hair for that matter. And we've been talking about that. The bottom line is it's asur midrabanan to squeeze out hair, or some types of brushes, not all, which we'll see. And the problem is, we said that because of the fact that the water gets trapped, it does not get absorbed, but it gets trapped in between the fibers, and therefore squeezing it out is a lefi the Rambam Mishabur brings down is a drabanan of schita. But I just want to go through some various different types of brushes. So a beautiful understanding of the inyan of brushes and hair also for that matter, but I want to try and stress a little bit today and stick to the brushes issue. For example, baby brushes, toothbrushes, all the various different types of brushes. So he brings down the Sefer Lamed Tes Malachas in the Malacha of DOSH in Ha'ara number 127 in the back. But Lamais he brings down from Reb Shlomo Zalman, which is actually brought down Ha'ara Mem Vav, Shmir Shabbos HILCHOS and so on. So he says like this: the whole davar she'ena beluah ve'ein nafchu mishtana machmas hamayim. Any time that you have water that's going in or being absorbed, however you want to look at it, and there's no real change. It's not. The word beluah really over here. We're saying the word absorb, but it's really not being absorbed, but whereby there's no change. It's not being really absorbed, whereby anything is being changed. In other words, the body of the item which is going into, like a rag, paper towel, whatever it is not being changed. Well, obviously, when you put water into something, whether it's a rag, a garment, paper, or the like, it blows up a little bit. It's not as flat. It's not dry anymore, and so on. So then there's some sort of a change. But anytime you do not have this type of change, v'gam and so again he explains weiter, does Rav Shlomo Zalman, that v'gam hachalolim shebein sa'aros hamavreshes nikarim, and also the second condition is that the bristles of the brush are recognizable. So for example, again, it sounds a little bit confusing. We're talking about materials, paper and the like. How does that come into play with brushes? So again, there's nothing that's being absorbed over here. He's explaining to us, Reb Shlomo Zalman, that the Lamaisa, there's nothing being absorbed over here where there's an actual change in the item itself, like paper, material, or the like. Number one. Number two, the bristles of the brush, whatever the brush is, which we'll see, are far enough away whereby they are recognizable. You see each bristle. Now, as opposed to what type of brush don't we see the bristles, right? So if you look at a toothbrush, for example, it's very compact together. Mamish, you can't even, you have to look very closely to see each bristle. If you look at from a couple of inches away, the regular standard way, you look at a toothbrush, it's very hard to see each bristle individually. Whereby if you look at a baby brush, baby bottle brush, the bristles are far apart, or sometimes there's a bathroom brush, these type of things where they clean out the bathroom and so on. The bristles are far apart, and each bristle is individually recognizable. So he explains weiter that hareze doime litzinar dakshal gumi. This is similar to a pipe, like some sort of a pipe whereby you pour water into the pipe and the water comes out of the pipe. And shemerik mimenu mayim. If you turn the pipe upside down, right, in other words, facing upwards, you pour water in, it goes in, and then if you turn it the other way, it goes out, and that's it. You don't have to shake it, you don't have to squeeze it. It was never absorbed. There was nothing happening. When you have a regular pipe, it goes in, water goes out, and that's all. And he finishes off, in such a type of a thing, if you could show me a type of a brush whereby, again, that there's no change, there's nothing being absorbed. In other words, let's say like the bristles are not made out of material or whatever, there's nothing actually being absorbed in the material itself, number one. And number two, that the bristles are far enough away where they're taka recognizable. So then it becomes, then it's like a regular pipe, like a regular sink faucet or whatever the case is. And there's no chashash of schita, even though one might pour water on it or turn it upside down and the water will fall off of it. That is no problem at all. And this is not what we know as schita cyrus, squeezing out the hair. So just real quickly to read over the English section, how he brings it down so beautiful on page 349. that schita, mefarek, this whole squeezing issue when it comes to brushes or hair, whatever the case is, can only occur when an absorbed liquid is extracted from a solid. Schita in general, the mefarek, the schita is only in the main schita, which we've been talking about from way back when, from squeezing out fruits and then into materials and so on, can only occur when an absorbed liquid is extracted from a solid. But if the liquid was merely trapped, like by hair or by a brush or so on, and was never really truly absorbed, number one. And number two, the bristles are widely spaced. They're widely spaced, whereby nothing is being trapped. So there's nothing being absorbed, nothing coming out that's from absorption, and there's nothing being trapped, whereby when one squeezes those bristles, there's nothing that was trapped. So then the removal of the liquid from that type of an item is not an act of schita, but merely it's comparable to an act of pouring. Like we said, it's a regular act of pouring. Like you have a pipe, you turn the pipe upside down, some water pours out of the pipe, and that's all. And that, we're going to tell you, is bichlal not a malacha at all. Oh, but then he goes on to say, this Sefer Lamtas Melachos, he explains weiter that, however, if the bristles or the fibers are closely packed together, and even though they might not absorb, they're plastic, whatever the case is, or nylon, whatever the case is, but they're closely packed together, they become halachically identical to a sponge, and fabric, they become halachically identical to a sponge or to fabric, cloth, or the like, and they may not be used midrabanan. Obviously, we saw that by a sponge, a sponge could be is also derabanan if it's synthetic, but let's say like regular material, so that could be the rice. Okay, whatever, be it as it may, but once the fibers or bristles are packed together very tightly, and then one squeezes that out, so that's already running into the family, like we've been talking about, of schita. Okay, so going along with this understanding, just real quickly to go through some brushes. A regular toothbrush on Shabbos, besides the fact you have memareach on the toothpaste, which is not allowed to be used. One is not allowed to use regular toothpaste on Shabbos, but he brings on just to read real quickly the Lashon on page 371, does the Sefer Lamentes Melachos, one may not use a regular toothbrush on Shabbos when it is wet. A dry toothbrush we'll try and get into in the upcoming Shiur, but a regular wet toothbrush, besides the fact you have the memareach on the toothpaste itself, that's smearing, but when a toothbrush is wet, one may not use that also because of these brushes are made with fine bristles that are densely packed and are therefore similar to the texture of natural hair. And it would go again, one squeezes out a toothbrush, pushing it up against your teeth or whatever the case is, and the toothbrush is wet. Now we're not talking about from the saliva of the mouth, we'll talk about that, but a regular wet toothbrush from the water or whatever, it's now wet, and they push it up against their teeth and they're squeezing it out, so that falls under the category of schita cyrus, like one squeezing out the hair, because again, because of the fact that the bristles, they're fine bristles, very small bristles, and they're densely packed together, thereby trapping the water. Again, I just want to right now go through the wet brushes. So Bezras Hashem will try and get through what about for toothbrushes dry? Is there a way? There is taka way, but we'll talk about that in the upcoming shiur. Now, what about for example, a baby brush bottle whereby the fibers are the bristles are far apart? So he goes right to the Sefer Lamentes Melachos on page 349. Brushes whose fibers are dense and soft may not be used for scrubbing when wet, as they are subject to schita, like we said. However, if the bristles are of stiff synthetic material, like a baby brush, a baby bottle brush, it's synthetic material, it's stiff, and it's sparse enough. They're far away. Each bristle is far away. They're sparse enough not to hold water. In other words, even when you put it under water per se, and then you pick up that brush, that baby bottle brush, and the one I'm talking about is whereby the bristles are taka far enough away from each other, and they're recognizable. Each bristle you could taka see it. They're not densely packed together, and the water just runs right off the bristles, and it's synthetic material. There's no natural fibers over there or the like. And it's sparse enough whereby it can't hold any water in between them, then brushing with such a brush is permitted. In other words, let's say one uses whatever the case is to rinse out a baby bottle. They have to give the baby milk a few times, whatever. They have to wash it out. So they're just sticking that in. There would be no issues of schita bechlal in such a brush. As long as the brush, one has to check the brush and make sure that the bristles are far enough apart. If it looks, if they're parts of the brush whereby Taka looks like a toothbrush densely together and they're very thin bristles and they're packed together, so then that's a problem. But if they're far enough apart whereby no water is staying, the way we mentioned this previously, the way to test it, you pick up the brush like a toothbrush, you wet it, you pick it up, turn it upside down, and see if the water comes out. So if you take this baby brush in general and the baby bottle brush and you wet it and you pick it up, and not to start shaking it, but you just pick it straight up and the water just runs right off. The water that's sitting on the bristles per se, that's like a glass. You wash out a glass. It's always going to have some sort of droplets on it, but there's nothing actually being trapped in between. Trapped meaning, if you take the toothbrush and you start squeezing it out, that water that's in between will come out. But over here, it's just that there's nothing being trapped inside. So the same is true, he brings down further, from a plastic mesh or a wire mesh pads or the like, whose fibers or the coils per se are thin and whose netting is widely spaced. We'll try and get into this a little bit more next time, and we want to talk a little bit about steel wool, also that's densely packed together, and so on, the upcoming shiurim. Thank you for listening. Kol Tov.